Kevin Stefanski was supposed to walk into Atlanta as the stabilizing force. Instead, his introduction sparked questions that refused to go away. Why did a routine coaching hire instantly reopen old wounds from Cleveland? And why does Shedeur Sanders' name still echo around a franchise he doesn't even play for? When Kevin Stefanski arrived in Cleveland, the expectation wasn't drama, it was structure, discipline. A steady offensive system built on timing, reads, and precision. And when Shedeur Sanders entered that building, he brought something very different: confidence, improvisation, and the kind of spotlight that doesn't quietly sit in the quarterback room. On paper, Shedeur's resume demanded attention. At Colorado, he posted elite production, high completion percentage, strong touchdown-to-interception ratio, and the poise of a player comfortable in chaos. He thrived extending plays. He processed quickly outside structure. He wasn't just executing plays, he was creating them. But Stefanski's system in Cleveland has always leaned the other way. It prioritizes rhythm drops, pre-snap reads, and staying inside the framework. For veteran quarterbacks, that can be stabilizing. For a young playmaker used to freedom, it can feel restrictive. Early reports suggested Shedeur wasn't immediately handed control of the offense. He spent time observing, learning, waiting. Some analysts argued that was normal for a rookie. Others questioned whether the leash was shorter than usual. That's when the conversation started shifting. When Shedeur did see the field, critics pointed out how conservative the game plans looked. Fewer deep shots, limited rollouts, simplified reads. Supporters of Stefanski said he was protecting a young quarterback from being overwhelmed, but some fans believed the play calling minimized what made Shedeur dangerous in the first place. And then came the noise. Local media narratives began circulating, questions about readiness, practice habits, command of the huddle. Nothing explosive, nothing officially confirmed, but enough to plant doubt. Rumors suggested tension behind closed doors. Some reports claimed there were philosophical disagreements about offensive identity. None of it was ever fully substantiated, but perception moves faster than clarification in the NFL. To be fair, Cleveland's offensive struggles weren't solely on one player or one coach. Injuries, protection issues, and roster inconsistencies all played a role. Stefanski has navigated quarterback turnover before. His system has worked in stretches. There were legitimate football reasons for caution. But here where it got complicated. Shedeur wasn't just another rookie. He carried a national profile, a brand, a last name tied to confidence and visibility. Every snap was dissected, every benching magnified, and whether intentional or not, the narrative that emerged was simple: a rigid coach and a dynamic quarterback weren't fully aligned. Some fans believed Shedeur was being developed carefully, others believed he was being contained. And once that belief took hold, it didn't stay in Cleveland. Atlanta isn't just another NFL city. It carries history, it carries identity, and when certain names are involved, that history gets louder. When the Atlanta Falcons drafted Deion Sanders 5th overall in 1989, they didn't just add a cornerback. They added prime time, flash, swagger, cultural energy that reshaped how the franchise was viewed nationally. He wasn't just a player, he became part of the city's sports mythology. The neon lights, the high steps, the two-sport dominance, Atlanta embraced it all. That connection never fully faded. So when conversations about Shedeur Sanders and his treatment in Cleveland resurfaced during Kevin Stefanski's introduction, the reaction in Atlanta wasn't neutral. It felt personal to some fans. Fair or not, the Sanders name still echoes differently in this market. Atlanta also stands at a unique crossroads culturally and economically. It's one of the most influential Black cities in America, with a proud history of leadership, entrepreneurship, and visibility. The Falcons' fan base reflects that. Representation, respect, and perception carry weight here in ways that might not register the same elsewhere. That's why some supporters didn't just evaluate Stefanski's resume, they evaluated the optics. Even if the Cleveland situation was more complex than online narratives suggested, perception matters. And in this case, perception was shaped by a storyline that a young, confident Black quarterback wasn't fully empowered within a rigid system. Whether that storyline was entirely accurate is still debated, but once that idea entered the public conversation, it traveled. In some NFL markets, a coaching hire like this might have produced a brief cycle of sports talk radio debate and then faded. In Atlanta, it intersected with legacy, with symbolism, with memory. And there's another layer. The Falcons are still searching for sustained identity. Since their Super Bowl run, consistency has been elusive. Coaching changes, quarterback transitions, rebuild language that feels permanent. Fans are sensitive to direction. They don't just want stability, they want alignment with the city's spirit. So when Stefanski stepped to the podium, this wasn't just about scheme or playbooks. It was about trust. Would he adapt? Would he empower? Would he understand the cultural weight attached to certain names and narratives? In another city, those questions might have been whispers. In Atlanta, they were amplified. And that amplification is what turned a routine hire into something much bigger than football. The backlash didn't begin on sports radio. It didn't start with a formal statement from ownership. It started online and it moved fast. Within hours of the hearing announcement, posts questioning Kevin Stefanski's past with Shedeur Sanders began circulating across X, Instagram, and Reddit. Old clips resurfaced. Screenshots of previous game decisions were reposted. Threads dissecting Cleveland's offensive play calling gained traction. What looked like a normal coaching hire suddenly had a digital spotlight attached to it. A hashtag calling for accountability began trending locally. Then nationally, fan-made graphics comparing Shedeur's college tape to his limited NFL opportunities spread rapidly. Some accounts framed the situation as mismanagement. Others defended Stefanski, arguing that rookie quarterbacks often need structure before freedom. But the speed of the narrative shift was the real story. In today's NFL, perception doesn't build slowly, it accelerates. Algorithms reward outrage, emotion travels further than nuance, and once a storyline gains momentum, it can feel bigger than the underlying facts. Screenshots began circulating from individuals claiming to be longtime season ticket holders. A few posted images suggesting they had contacted the ticket office about cancellations. It's unclear how widespread those actions truly were. Teams rarely disclose exact renewal impacts in real time, but the symbolism mattered. Even the idea of financial pushback changes the temperature of a conversation. Some fans created organized online communities dedicated to monitoring Stefanski's past decisions. They compiled statistics, play breakdowns, timeline threads. Whether entirely balanced or selectively curated, the effort signaled something important. This wasn't random frustration, it was coordinated energy. At the same time, others pushed back. National analysts reminded audiences that coaching controversies often spike in the offseason and fade by week 3. They pointed out that Stefanski has previously led playoff-caliber teams. They questioned whether the online reaction reflected the broader fan base or just the loudest segment. And that's where the uncertainty lives. Is this organic outrage from a deeply connected fan culture, or is it an amplified narrative driven by digital echo chambers? Because history shows something consistent in the NFL, online movements feel massive until the team starts winning. But if early struggles hit, that same digital momentum can turn into sustained pressure. Right now it's noise. What it becomes depends on one thing: results. The public reaction is one thing. The real question lives behind closed doors. What does the locker room think? Because in the NFL, you can survive social media storms, you can outlast talk radio, but if players don't buy in, the tension shows up on Sundays. The Atlanta Falcons have a roster in transition, young playmakers, developing leadership voices, a quarterback room that still needs identity. That makes coaching tone more important than ever. Structure can stabilize a team, but too much rigidity can quietly fracture trust, especially with younger stars who value collaboration over command. Some insiders have suggested there were private conversations among veteran players after the hire. Nothing dramatic, no public statements, just internal discussions about what Stefanski's reputation means for development and communication style. That's normal in this league. Players talk, they study film, they watch how coaches handled previous rosters. And here's the part that matters: perception spreads in locker rooms just like it spreads online. If even a handful of players believe a coach limits creativity, that narrative can linger. It doesn't have to be true across the board, it just has to exist. At the same time, there are players who prefer structured systems, veterans who believe young quarterbacks need discipline before freedom. Some around the league have defended Stefanski's approach in Cleveland, arguing that protecting a rookie with controlled game plans is responsible coaching, not suppression. So which version does the Falcons' locker room believe? In the NFL, silence doesn't always mean agreement. Contracts include non-disparagement clauses. Public criticism of a head coach can lead to fines or worse. That's why most tension, if it exists, never reaches a microphone. Instead, it shows up in subtler ways. Body language on the sideline, energy in huddles, effort in optional workouts. Those signals matter more than press conferences. There are also rumors, unconfirmed, that some players across the league privately reached out to express curiosity about how Stefanski plans to evolve. Not rebellion, not resistance, just questions. How flexible will the system be? How much autonomy will quarterbacks have at the line? How collaborative will weekly game planning feel? Those questions aren't accusations, they're part of modern NFL culture. Players today are more empowered, they expect dialogue, they expect adaptation. And if Stefanski addresses that head-on, the narrative shifts quickly. But if early struggles happen, if a young quarterback looks hesitant, if play calling feels conservative, critics won't hesitate to connect dots back to Cleveland. That's the tightrope. Because locker rooms don't explode overnight, they tilt slowly, trust builds gradually, and once belief cracks, it's hard to restore. Right now, everything is hypothetical. There's no public revolt, no player has stepped forward, no confirmed division. But in this league, the question is whether noise exists. It's whether the men in the building believe in the voice leading them. And that answer never comes from Twitter. In the NFL, emotion makes headlines, money makes decisions. Fans can trend hashtags for days, analysts can debate philosophy for weeks, but ownership groups don't move based on outrage alone, they move when numbers start shifting. That's the layer most people don't see. Arthur Blank didn't build the Atlanta Falcons into a multi-billion-dollar franchise by reacting to noise. He's known around the league as one of the more patient, business-minded owners. Stability matters to him. Optics matter too, but only when they threaten long-term growth. The Falcons were purchased for roughly $500 million in 2002. Today, the franchise valuation sits in the billions. That growth isn't powered by emotion. It's powered by revenue streams, season tickets, sponsorships, broadcast deals, merchandise, premium seating, corporate partnerships. So here's the uncomfortable truth: protests alone don't scare owners. Financial instability does. When online movements suggest ticket cancellations, the front office doesn't immediately panic. They verify, they analyze renewal rates, they compare data year over year. A few viral screenshots don't equal a trend, but if cancellation percentages climb beyond normal off-season fluctuations, that's when meetings get scheduled. Sponsors are another pressure point. Corporate partners don't like controversy attached to their brand investments. If even a handful begin asking for reassurance calls, not threatening to leave, just asking questions, executives take note, not because they expect collapse, but because perception risk affects negotiation leverage. Then there's the broadcast layer. National networks love drama, but sustained negative narratives tied to leadership can influence primetime scheduling and market perception. It's subtle but real. Owners care deeply about how their franchise is framed on a national stage. Still, hear what history shows: winning solves almost everything. If Atlanta starts hot, say 4-1 or 5-2, the same social media accounts fueling outrage will shift tone. Ticket renewals stabilize, sponsors relax, national analysts pivot to redemption arc segments. But if the team struggles early, that's when the pressure compounds. Because then the story becomes convenient. Every conservative play call gets dissected. Every stalled drive becomes symbolic. Every quarterback hesitation turns into proof of narrative. Fair or unfair, losing gives controversy oxygen. Owners don't fire coaches because Twitter trends for 48 hours. They fire coaches when three things align. Performance declines. Revenue projections soften. Internal belief erodes. The third one is the most dangerous. If executives sense players aren't fully bought in, that affects free agency conversations. Agents talk. Word spreads quickly across the league. If top-tier free agents quietly question organizational stability, that impacts roster-building strategy. That's when ownership starts calculating cost versus damage. But right now, none of that has officially happened. There are rumors, there are online movements, there's amplified conversation, but there is no confirmed financial collapse, no sponsor exits, no executive statement suggesting panic. And that's important. Because in the NFL, perception can feel like reality until the numbers come in. The Falcons' leadership understands something simple: outrage spikes fast and fades fast. Revenue trends are slower, more telling indicators. So while fans debate culture and identity, ownership watches spreadsheets. And if the spreadsheets stay strong, patience wins. If they do, that's when even the most stable organizations start asking hard questions. In this league, belief matters. But balance sheets matter more. This situation feels personal, it feels specific. But zoom out and it fits into a much bigger NFL pattern, one the league has wrestled with for decades. Rookie quarterbacks enter the league today with something previous generations didn't always have: power, visibility, brand presence. They're not just draft picks, they're national names before they take a professional snap. Nil deals, social media followings, media training. By the time they reach the NFL, they already carry influence. And that changes the dynamic. Established head coaches, especially those who built reputations on structure and control, often believe in system-first football. The quarterback operates within the framework. Progressions are timed, footwork is drilled, freedom comes later if at all. That philosophical gap is where tension begins. Some fans believe young quarterbacks should adapt completely, learn the system, earn trust, pay dues. That's the traditional model. Others argue the modern NFL requires adaptation from coaches. College offenses are more advanced than ever. Spread concepts, RPO packages, off-schedule creativity. When a rookie arrives with elite improvisational skills, limiting that ability can feel like suppressing the very trait that made him valuable. Neither side is entirely wrong. History shows examples of both outcomes. There have been rookies who flourished under strict structure, gradually earning expanded control. There have also been highly drafted quarterbacks who struggled in rigid systems, only to thrive later in schemes built around their strengths. The debate isn't new, it just evolves with each generation. What makes today different is visibility. When tension existed decades ago, it stayed inside meeting rooms. Now it leaks into podcasts, anonymous reports, sideline body language clips, and social media breakdown threads. Every play call becomes evidence. Every benching becomes symbolic. And when the quarterback carries a recognizable last name or cultural presence, that spotlight intensifies. The NFL has also faced ongoing conversations about how quarterbacks, particularly confident, outspoken young quarterbacks, are perceived. Some fans believe bold personality is leadership. Others interpret it as arrogance. Coaches may see it as passion or as distraction. Those interpretations vary widely depending on philosophy and generational perspective. That's where narratives can quietly form. If a rookie is described as needing to mature, some hear normal developmental language. Others hear coded criticism. If a coach emphasizes discipline, some hear accountability. Others hear suppression. The truth usually lives somewhere in between. Most coaching staffs believe they are protecting young quarterbacks from being overwhelmed. The NFL playbook is complex. Defensive disguises are relentless. Mistakes multiply quickly under bright lights. A conservative approach early can prevent confidence from shattering. But from the outside, patience can look like hesitation. And when wins don't immediately follow, that patience is reinterpreted as mismanagement. Another layer is job security. Head coaches operate under pressure that rookie quarterbacks don't initially feel. A struggling season can cost a coach his position. That reality sometimes leads to conservative decisions. Protect the ball, limit risk, avoid chaos. For a creative young quarterback, that can feel constraining. It becomes a clash of timelines. The rookie thinks long-term growth, the coach feels short-term survival. That tension isn't about personality, it's about stakes. The NFL has repeatedly shown that the most successful partnerships often involve mutual adaptation. Coaches who adjust concepts to fit quarterback strengths, quarterbacks who learn to master structure before bending it. When that balance is achieved, narratives disappear. When it isn't, the story grows louder than the playbook. So this isn't just about one hire or one past situation. It's about a league constantly evolving and sometimes struggling to align old school control with new school confidence. And until that alignment becomes standard, every rookie versus veteran dynamic will carry the same question. Who adapts first? Winning changes everything. Right now, this entire situation lives in the realm of perception, debate, projection, but the NFL has always had a brutal, simple scoreboard logic. If Kevin Stefanski walks into Week 1 with the Atlanta Falcons and they start stacking wins, the temperature drops almost overnight. If Atlanta opens the season 4-1, the narrative shifts from controversy to competence. Headlines pivot, analysts reframe the hire as steady leadership. The same structured system that critics called rigid suddenly becomes disciplined. Conservative play calling becomes situationally smart. That's how fast language changes in this league. Fans don't abandon passion, but they recalibrate it around results. If the offense looks efficient, if the quarterback appears confident, if the locker room energy feels unified, the noise fades into background chatter. Social media accounts lose traction. Protest hashtags stop trending. Sponsors breathe easier. Ticket renewals stabilize. Ownership looks patient and wise instead of reactive. Winning doesn't erase history, it just makes it less urgent. But here where it gets interesting. If Atlanta struggles early, say they start 1-4, the entire narrative hardens. Every stalled drive becomes symbolic. Every sideline interaction gets clipped and dissected. If the quarterback hesitates before a throw, critics will connect it back to the Cleveland storyline. Fairly or unfairly, early losses would validate the doubts that already exist. And once that validation sets in, perception turns into pressure. The media cycle would intensify. National segments would revisit the hire. Commentators would ask whether the front office underestimated the cultural dynamics of the city. Former players might weigh in. Even neutral analysts would be forced to address the storyline because controversy drives coverage. In that scenario, Stefanski wouldn't just be coaching games, he'd be coaching against a narrative. The Falcons' ownership, led by Arthur Blank, would then face a more complicated calculation. Not just wins and losses, but trajectory. Is the team improving week to week? Does the quarterback look empowered? Is the locker room aligned publicly and privately? Because here's the reality, owners rarely fire coaches for one bad month. They fire coaches when belief disappears. If players publicly defend their coach, if effort remains high, if internal confidence holds steady, early losses can be survived. But if body language changes, if energy dips, that's when executives start asking harder questions. There's also the long-term brand factor. Atlanta is a market that values identity. If fans feel disconnected from leadership, even moderate success might not fully quiet concerns, but sustained winning, playoff contention, a division title run, that rewrites everything. The NFL has seen it before. Coaches once doubted become culture builders. Quarterbacks once questioned become franchise cornerstones. Redemption arcs are common, but they require proof. And proof only comes on Sundays. That's why this entire debate sits on a knife's edge. Right now, it's theory versus memory, system versus perception, philosophy versus expectation. But once the season kicks off, all of that compresses into 60 minutes each week. If Stefanski wins, the controversy becomes a footnote, a loud offseason that didn't matter. If he loses, the narrative becomes prophecy and every early concern feels justified. That's the brutal clarity of professional football. It doesn't care about hashtags, it doesn't care about press conferences, it doesn't even care about legacy debates. It cares about the scoreboard. And in Atlanta, the scoreboard will decide whether this hire becomes a turning point or a warning sign that everyone saw coming.